And welcome to Realtalk live streaming. I got a very special guest in the house. Just a FYI, if you turn to the Facebook page, Robin San Vicente wanted to know what was upcoming. I put it out there. It's a generic posting, but I pinned it, so it's going to stay at the top. There's four referenced shows, all on Mondays. The Fridays are just on hold for a little bit as we develop things within CBRA. But I wanted everyone to know that those schedules have been that way for years. They haven't changed. They're ever developing, and we're trying to make them better and improved along the way. Um, also, I wanted to let you guys know that StreamYard is what software I use. And if you're having difficulty, there's like 9 different platforms that I utilize, and then I share it out with about 20. So I'm going to go to my good friend, and I really mean that, my good friend, Mr. Chief Scott Titus. How are you doing there, Chief?
I'm great, John. How are you today? Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
you're very welcome. And you're kind of stuck in a cubby hole, and I know the office well, the closet I stayed in during one of the hurricanes,
Yes.
and the station is moving along. So, can you kind of give us your location update and the station update?
Yeah. So while the station is being torn down and rebuilt here, Station 81 at the City Hall complex, um, most of my staff is kind of scattered throughout City Hall. So it's a little dark in here in a former closet that we have kind of made into a makeshift office. So it works just fine, but it's a little bit dark, so it's difficult to see me. I'll work on getting better lighting. But the station's coming along great. They're telling us that probably late December of 26 should be completed. So, we'll get a few rain days in there or whatever. I imagine so it'll be sometime January of 27. We should be getting ready to move into back into that station and kind of get our team back together. It's difficult because we're spread amongst 3 floors here at City Hall, so it makes team cohesion a little more challenging than normal, but we're making it work, and we appreciate having some space to utilize in the meantime.
What's it going to be like when that station is done?
It's going to be amazing. I think sometimes we take for granted how nice it is to be able to, walk next door to an office or walk down the hall. That daily interaction, and as you're kind of directing the orchestra, for a lack of a better term, is incredibly helpful. So uh, it feels very disconnected here. So it's not just us amongst our own team in the administration, but being in the firehouse has always been incredibly important to me because we're so busy. I don't get out to all the stations as much as I'd like to and see everybody. So I always make a point to come in through the back and then leave through the back every day when we're working out of the firehouse. And to have administration back there gives an opportunity to run into at least a third of our people, every day. And then as people rotate, if they do a swap or something like that, or are coming in to get supplies or whatever, have an opportunity to see people that I don't see quite as often. So it's super impactful and very important to do. And so it's been a little difficult being here, but as I said, we're appreciative for the space and we're making it work. So, but we're incredibly excited to have a space to work out of where we'll all be together. We're going to be separated from the crews by the bay floor, so they'll have their own area, but it's convenient access for them and for us. And then, of course, next door they're working on the project for the new emergency operations center, which you and I've talked about before, and that's going to be incredible to have right next door for when we have storm events or major disasters. So.
Well, and we've had our fair share of storm events, and we're working on a lot of things within the that EOC and fire department upgrades. I know that City Hall is looking to do some things there down the road.
Yes.
I was paying attention to its roof, and of course we've had the conversation last week with Deputy Chief Morales about the police department and how they're managing their small area that they have now and overloaded area. But I want to point something out to people because I was over with the city for the hurricane event at the Morgan Center. And one of the things I noticed was that we need to give some shout outs to staff that are currently making a tent their home. Can you kind of give an overview of what the guys are going through and how they're adjusting and what the citizens need to be aware of?
Well, there's a so because we wanted to keep our response times and our response areas somewhat consistent, we were very fortunate to have the space here in the City Hall complex to put up a temporary facility. So there is it's a mobile home that was erected over there, then with a tent structure for the apparatus to park in. So it has some protection from the weather. So our personnel are still responding, even though that station has been torn down and is being rebuilt. They're responding still out of the same City Hall complex area. So our response times and our stats and everything will be the same as if we were on location where we were previously. And it's cramped quarters for those guys, but for the year or a little bit over a year that we have to do it, they're doing a great job of making it work, and very grateful to still be in the same area as are we.
So I'm gonna start out this conversation with I think a 6-letter word that's kind of hitting everybody over there at City Hall area right now: budget. Um, how's the fire department handling the budget and where things should be right now, and how do you feel about it?
Well, John, so I've been through this many times, and so our budget really, most people think that you formulate a budget and then it's kind of adopted and you're done. It's a very short period of time, but our budget development really starts in the fall. So when the new budget starts October 1st of the fiscal year, we start looking at what our needs were the previous year, where we're going, and we have a lot of different tools that kind of help us do that. And we start putting out to our team members, and we ask people that are responsible for areas of responsibility to turn in budget submissions and justifications of what their needs are and why it costs. And we kind of pull that together, and we look at everything, and we look at where our budget was before, and we break down what are needs versus wants. And for the last fair number of years, the wants kind of get really kind of pushed aside, and we make sure that we focus on our needs and try and maintain the level of service that we have. We do very much like the city. We have our own strategic plan, and so we have pillars and areas of concentration, and so we try and focus all of our budgetary costs on what the needs are to continue to provide the level of service that we do to the community that we serve now. And so that really goes through up till now, and we won't be at a final budget for adoption until late September. So we've had several iterations of the budget with the finance department already and with the city manager, and then this coming actually this week, tomorrow evening, there's an eat and greet tomorrow at the not the Mullen Center, at the Morgan Center. And yep. So the community can come out and see what we're working on for our budgets and see some of the things that have already been cut out of the budget. And then in June, the first week of June, there will be 2 days of budget workshops with the commission. And unfortunately, I think this is one of the very few years, if one of the only years, that I won't be in attendance. I'll be in Washington, D.C. My daughter's graduating from the Secret Service Academy out there, so I'm going to miss it. But,
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Deputy Chief Hurley and the team, they do a phenomenal job, and so they'll be there to go over our budget, justify it, talk about the things that have been cut out that we think really shouldn't be cut out, and why. And then the commissioners and the city, they have a tough time wading through all that to figure out, where we finally land in September. And all of that is all predicated on, we don't really know what the assessment role is and what the taxes are going to be. We have an idea and we make estimates, but until budget adoption comes and until the county property appraiser develops the role, the first iteration we get is in June. And then there's usually a slight adjustment into July for us to know whether or not, property values for the ad valorem taxes went up or down, or whether building values, went up or down. And we're kind of in a softening market right now, so I think that's going to make things a little bit tough. And the city is looking to try and free up some money out of current budgets to show that they can make payments for certificates of participation for some major projects in the city that we've needed for a long time. So there's a lot going on, but it's a team effort and kind of organized through finance and the city manager's office, and we're all kind of working towards being successful with that goal and still trying to maintain the level of service that we have for the community.
So I'm going to ask you what I asked Deputy Chief Morales. How is staffing in the fire department?
So right now, we just hired 9, which those were vacancies, and we actually already have through promotions and through attrition, we've got I think five vacancies left. So we will probably wait and hire those in the fall, and then we are looking to hire 6 new people, which was cut out of the budget currently, because we're going to open another fire station in about 2.5 years. And what we found out is that if we wait and hire everybody all at once, one, it's very, very impactful on the organization. And typically, when you hire a group that large, you don't get the cream of the crop. You get some people as you go down that list that, if you're going to hire 18 people at once, it's difficult to get that many quality candidates all at one time. There was a time when we used to advertise and put out for hiring, and we would get 120 applications. And statewide right now, I actually talked to the retired fire chief from Metro Dade. He used to get thousands of applications, and I think he said they had 150 applications this last time that they opened up. We've been running about 30, and out of those 30, we might get 20 that actually meet the qualifications. And then when we go through our testing process, that gets weaned down. And again, this group that we just hired was 9. And that's probably the largest group that we've been successful getting that deep on the list. Typically, we'll get a list of 5 or 6 that are good quality candidates, and then we'll just wait. And we try to set our hiring schedule up at 6-month intervals right now. So it gives us time to get them on board, get them trained, get them through orientation, get them settled in, and then start the next group.
So looking down the road at 2.5 years, you're progressively marching that direction and filling that station, training, camaraderie, good leadership being built within.
Sure.
Is that transition what you've seen been of value for that transition?
Yeah, hiring in smaller groups is much better. So we need 15 people to staff a normal station. So that's 3 for fire apparatus and 2 for the ambulance, and then 1 person for time off. That accounts for time off, sick time, or holiday vacation time. So that's a total of 18. So our goal is typically we hire 6 a year, and we've been successful with that. Working towards it, because when we hire all those people, we don't take them all and put them in a single station. But our journeyman program, which is really how a day 1 firefighter then becomes independent functioning, they go through what's called a journeyman program. That's 42 months. So it's a set of modules that they have to do and complete, get signed off on. There's written skills that they have to do. There's knowledge they get tested upon, and then hands-on skills, of course, that they get tested on through that time. And when we hire 6 at a time, it gives them time. So they're at varied levels of expertise, but at least we have that first group is usually hitting that journeyman level and that independent functioning level by the time we open that station. And then we distribute those 18 amongst, the other stations as well. So they're not all in one place, but then we're not flooding ourselves with a whole bunch of brand new people off of the street, because that can impact what our performance is on fire or on the EMS call. So we've been very successful with that. 2018, we got a SAFER grant. We hired 21 people at the same time, and it was disastrous. I never realized really how much a group like that could impact our culture. We have a very, very well-established culture, which focuses on being exceptional and kind of maintaining the standard. We have a very high level of standard of expectation. When we hired this group, and there was a lot of them that they didn't want to work that hard, and they really pushed back, and it made it very, very difficult for us. So we had a lot of turnover in that first 3 years out of that group. And I think we probably, out of 21 that were hired, I think we might have retained 11 or 12 out of that original group. And some of those that we didn't retain turned over multiple times. So it was expensive, and it was a learning lesson and impactful. And so we've gone back to these smaller groups, and that's been a lot.
Well, but I want to talk there for just a second, because the fact that you had to go through that attrition changed for a small period of time, but now that you've built that infrastructure that you like, how has retention been post that?
It's been actually very good. So we typically have attrition of, we may lose one person out of an orientation group on occasion, maybe one a year, one every year and a half. But for the most part, we retain them. Now there is a period of time when they hit that 42-month mark, they have to take a test. It's a pretty significant test to become what we call a journeyman or a journey person, which is independent functioning. And if they fail that test one time, they get put on a performance improvement plan and they get given 6 months. And they get a second opportunity to take that test. If they fail, they're terminated. So you really have to know your stuff. And so we've lost a few here and there on the journeyman test, but typically it's one of the things that we've done to prevent. You only get people on orientation for a year, and sometimes a year isn't quite enough to know what their full capacity is or what their continued work ethic and efforts are. And so when you get that 42-month glimpse and they go through that process and they take that test, really whether they've committed themselves and whether they're paying attention and whether they're maintaining the standards that we've set and meeting that bar of expectation. So although it's tough to separate somebody, after that long a period of time, it has really been beneficial in maintaining what we expect for our level of service for the community. And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
For the leaders that are out there who are listening, who are going through some of these things, how would you have done anything different to implement what you've got today to either make it easier, not easier for the standard, but just easier on the implementation of it?
Well, and that's kind of how we arrived to where we are now. The one thing we did is making it smaller groups. We've also slowed down to where, when we had a vacancy, we used to hire immediately when we had a vacancy. It was inefficient as far as the amount of overtime that it took to do that, because sometimes you might have a group of 2 people, sometimes you had 5 people, and it was, we could end up doing 3 or 4 hirings in a year. So as I said, we've cut that down to every 6 months, and if we don't have anybody, we won't hire. We've also been very selective. If we were hiring 8 people and we had a list of 10, we would hire the first 8. We don't just hire the first 8 anymore. They go through a multi-tiered process of taking an ability test. First, they go to a third party first. They do a written test that involves multiple different aspects. Then they do a CPAT, which is a kind of an agility test. And then they have to come to us and they have to do an ability test. A lot of our people go out and participate and watch that day that they come. And I always tell them, I said, it's not about being the fastest. It's about showing us how hard you'll work. So if you're in the very best shape and you finish that like a breeze, well, that's impressive, but we want to see how hard you're going to try. Like at the end of it, we want to know that you've given it everything you could. And so our people go out and they watch that. And then we set up a new hire panel, which is comprised of people at every level in the organization, from a relatively new apprentice to a journeyman to a lieutenant, a district chief, and then somebody from the training bureau. And then we do a separate chief's interview, and they interview by both panels. Both panels independently determine a ranking for them, and then at the end of the day or end of the process, we get together and we look at where we each rank those candidates and talk about how many we want to take. Sometimes the chief's interview sometimes gleans some information that maybe wasn't shown in the panel interview, and vice versa. So it's good. We get together and talk about that. Then we can prize our list and decide, how deep on that list we want to go.
So let's go to the citizens now.
Sure.
How are you guys engaging with the citizens on from the police or from the fire department's standpoint? I did talk with Deputy Chief Morales about that in some regards, and your outreach. Can you talk about what you guys do there?
Absolutely. So we've always had outreach. I think this year it's probably better organized than it ever has been. One of the positions that we created is somebody that's really in charge of all of our community risk reduction, which involves a lot of our public outreach programs. His name's Jay Sousa, and I didn't realize, when I was asked about whether we were getting education out to the schools and things like that, my answer was yes. But over the years, we were kind of at the mercy of the school schedule. And as we got more schools and got busier, not all of them were reaching out to us. And so we've implemented a program now where it's very proactive. this year, the target goal was for Jay to get into every one of the schools. So we're hitting from kindergarten through I think fourth grade or fifth grade. We're hitting every classroom in all the schools. Every high school graduating class does a hands-only CPR, so they have interaction with us. Jay's been going out to the HOAs and some of the civic associations and discussing different fire safety tips and different community safety tips. And we are in the process right now of doing our strategic plan. Part of that involves a community risk analysis. So we'll be looking at what risks we've identified in the community and what programs we have or what programs we can develop in the future to help eliminate or reduce some of that risk. So, for example, if we had an area of town that was having a lot of fires or something like that, we might go and look and say, and we did it years ago where we went door to door knocking on doors with the smoke detector program to make sure that everybody in that area had smoke detectors, so that we minimized any loss of life and also minimized economic loss, so that we were getting early notification and things like that. So. But that program's been very successful. We've also started this year, they're actually getting ready to graduate next week. We started a cadet program, so high school juniors and seniors in the area, and to introduce them to what we do. And they do pretty much for the whole school year. They come a couple nights a month, and they spend time with us doing aspects of the job and learning about everything that we do, from pulling hose to things we do on medical calls, how to do a search, station life, kind of everything, to determine and get an idea of which one of those candidates, or if it's something they'd like to maybe pursue. And we try and vet them on the front end, see if they have interest in public safety in the future. And very happy to say that of all the graduating high school seniors, we have 5 of them that are going to apply for fire school, and we're helping them with some scholarships. And the rest of them are all applying to college. And then we've got 3 returning juniors. So we're taking applications actually now. We'll be starting that program up again next year. This group will graduate, I think it's the second week of June. So,
well, with that amount of attention being paid to the consumers, I'm going to ask you a question, because I just thought of this, and I'm not. It'll impress me if you actually know the number, and I'm not trying to throw you a curveball. Are we in a position where we're less on fires this year compared to last year?
So brush fires, actually, I'm going to knock on wood here. I will tell you,
because it's been too dry.
It's dry, and fortunately, we've had rapid notification and we've had rapid response, and those fires have been in locations we've been able to get on them relatively quickly and not have a significant amount of damage. As a matter of fact, today we're developing our community risk analysis right now, and when I look at the numbers over the last 5 years for brush fires, I kind of shake my head. It just doesn't make sense to me, because in years past, as you know, I've been here since 1993, and the amount of acreage that has burned over the past 5 years is really statistically insignificant in comparison to the 10 years prior to that. 1998, 2000, 2001, 2005, we had just significant numbers of fires, and we've been fortunate, especially with all the storms that we've had come through. There's been a lot of fall down material. There's a lot of buildup of dead material on the ground that's just been drying out, which leads to added fuel load and increased dangers for wildfire activity. And again, thankfully, by chance and I think a little bit of luck and rapid responses, we've been fortunate that our fires haven't really turned into large losses as far as brush fires go.
Well, my follow-up to that is one of concern, I think, because we've been in this extended drought. I mentioned rainy season the other day, and somebody said, "Rainy season? What is that?" And I'm like, "Well, we have one." So a few years back, over here on Toledo Blade and Price, we had a small outbreak. I dare say that if we had that same outbreak today, we would have a problem, because I know several times the helicopter came into the lake behind my villa and uploaded. I don't know that there's enough water in there right now for them to do that. And that is a problem throughout our state right now. But how are we addressing that concern? Because I see that as and I know you. And now that I've spent time in the hurricane shelter with you, and I understand what you guys do, assessing all of that, I know you've got a built-in answer for this, and I'm excited to hear it because strategically that had to change a lot of things.
Some of it's, you know, just a continued community message. I don't know if you noticed. So a couple of weeks ago, typically when we do a burn ban, and the way that our language in the ordinance is written is, we typically have developed that off of what's called the KBDI. And that's moisture, ground moisture levels. And Sarasota County itself is triggered automatically at 500. It just turns on, and then when it falls below 500, it turns off. So that could be back and forth over 3 or 4 days. Historically, our discussions with the Florida Forest Service, who we work very closely with on these things, they felt like for us 500 was a little low. So our trigger is actually at 600. At 600, we put out extraordinary fire hazard, and we do a burn ban. And then when it drops below 500 for 7 days of consecutive days, then we withdraw that burn ban. But it keeps kind of some of the back and forth. A couple of weeks ago, we made a determination. We actually waited 10 days to withdraw the burn ban. And it's something that I've never seen in all of my time here. We had most of our city, probably 95% of our city, was at a KBDI of about 350, which is, it's reasonable. It's not a dangerous level at all. But the whole coastline was 600, 650, just bright red. It was a portion of the state forest, and Welland Park was bright red. They were all 600. But it was the smallest, you know, those were the smallest part of the city, and Welland Park has the least wildfire exposure. So after being, there's also a reading, when you look at the entire county, you can look at a map that shows which areas are, you know, 300, 400, 500, 600, and then they give you a mean average. So the county changes theirs based on the mean average. I always look at what's exactly going on in the city so that we can make the best decision. So Friday, a couple of weeks ago, we elected to withdraw our burn ban on Friday to go out on Monday. And Monday morning, we got a notice on Sunday night that Sarasota County was reenacting their burn ban on Monday at the same time as ours was being withdrawn. So it created a lot of communication issues for the city and the county. We had a couple of days that were red flag days that day. And even though our ground fuel moisture levels were okay, the humidity was very low, the winds were high. And even though the KBDI was low and it didn't fit that normal criteria for a burn ban, had we gotten a fire that week, it probably would have been problematic. So the following week, we talked to Charlotte County. They were going to enact their burn ban again. We went ahead and reenacted ours, and we're probably going to leave it in place, even though our KBDI through the city is not really at that normal threshold for us, just because we keep getting these red flag days and because we have such a large amount of buildup material. So until we get into some regular seasonal rains, I'm sure you've seen the notices. Utilities is actually, you know, I think second stage right now, and they could advance where they have to lower the water pressure on the system, which of course impacts us. That impacts us for firefighting duties. Impacts the amount of water that's going to the sprinkler systems in commercial buildings, how much is available for us to pool. You know, certain size buildings need a certain number of gallons per minute to put the fire out. So those are things that we're always constantly looking at. So it's repetitive community messaging that goes out. We've also been in communications with Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte counties on enacting a tanker task force, basically, for our rural areas that are non-hydrogen. We have one tanker that we staff all the time here in the city, and then we have a reserve tanker if that frontline tanker is out of service. So it can be a little while for us to get other tankers to come in. So we're putting a tanker task force into place where certain types of calls in certain areas, we get an immediate response of 5 other tankers from around the 3-county area, Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte, to get a little bit more rapid response to get water out to those areas. And then just keeping an eye on conditions and kind of getting the messaging out and tell people, even whether there is a burn ban out or not a burn ban out, anytime that we're we're doing any kind of activities outdoors that involves open fire or flames or hot coals or embers or smoking material or any of that stuff, is that any one of those things can be a start for a fire, and at the wrong time of the day with the right winds and humidity levels, it can be catastrophic for us. So
It doesn't take long either.
no, sir.
I know that the day that the fire happened over here by Pink Tequila, that fire came across the street in no time.
Yeah.
And you guys were all over it. And heroics are saving buildings. Give you lose some trees and some areas, but you guys didn't lose a building. So kudos to the fire department for doing what they did that day, because that was pretty dramatic, and it happened pretty quickly. Now the blessing that you also had was there was a big lake over there, and that lake, I kind of forgot about that until this conversation, but we still have that big body of water right there for this area for that helicopter to drop down and grab.
Yeah, that lake was originally dug from a developer way back that said he was going to put a water park in way back in the, I think, early 90s. And he was putting a water park in. He was just selling the dirt. And I think that kind of got found out. That was a man-made lake that was dug.
It's beautiful, though.
It is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. There's some good fishing back there, too. So I've heard.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
You've got a lot happening with all the transitions, the new building, hiring staff, and different things like that. How much do you lean on your chiefs and deputy chiefs to come along the way?
A lot. I mean, nothing gets done. There's no I in team, as the old saying goes. And I'm very, very fortunate and honored to lead the fire department, but by no means is the fire department successful because of my efforts alone. I've got an amazing team of officers, chief officers, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and administrative staff that just daily come to work, looking at all the things we need to do to be better. So we just, I think we talked about it last time I was on the show. We were evaluated again for our ISO. We're expecting probably late summer to get a response back on that, but we're expecting to maintain our ISO 1. This past year, we got ambulance accredited, which is a pretty big deal. It's less than 1% of departments that are fire EMS in the country have that. When you add that to ISO 1, and then we're in the process right now of going through fire accreditations. So through the Commission on Fire Accreditation International, from the Center of Public Safety Excellence, we're pursuing that accreditation. It's supposed to be a 3-year process, but we're doing it about 18 months. So we're putting everything together right now and expect to go in front of that commission in the spring. So I believe January, February of 27. And we're pretty confident that we'll be awarded our fire accreditation. I think it's probably about 0.1% of departments in the country that have an ISO 1 International Fire Accreditation and CAS ambulance accreditation. And we do that because all of those things measure, and it's kind of our way of showing the community that, one, we're consistently looking and reevaluating all the things that we do to see how we can do the better, looking for efficiencies, making sure that we are looking at what industry standards are and that we're measuring up to those, making sure we set goals and benchmarks for continuous quality improvement, from everything from response times to patient outcomes to fire mitigation, loss prevention, everything. And so I'm very, very proud of the team. That's one of the big things that's occupying a lot of our time right now at the same time as we're doing budget is that accreditation it's a pretty heavy lift, but it's incredibly important in our industry to show where you are, where you want to be in the future, and then be able to benchmark and show what your progress is towards those goals.
So we've got a fire station down, but it's operative.
Yes, sir.
We've got Price Boulevard that's a disaster, but it's not. It's still flowing. And I think they're doing a heck of a nice job in managing traffic through there. And I think the citizens have done a smart adjustment, trying to keep traffic off of that road. But but we talked about something before the uh, price expansion started to happen. And I want to talk a little bit about call times and how are you feeling now that we're into this cycle of assessment, and our call times, have we been hit hard um, and in decreasing the standard that you wanted to keep, or are we maintaining?
We're pretty close to maintaining. I think there's some isolated responses, but I'm thankful to say that we haven't had any responses where there's been a negative outcome or consequence as a result of having any what you would call a delay. When I say a delay, it might, if it takes us a minute longer to get on scene. But I agree with you. They've done a really good job on price. We communicate regularly with them. The flag people that are out there are doing a really good job of, if we're running lights and sirens, of making sure that they've got traffic moving in our direction of travel so that we can continue. So thankfully, we haven't seen a huge significant hit to those response numbers. This past year, we added, we had an ambulance that was doing 12 hours during the day and 12 hours at night. 12 hours during the day, it's Fire Station 82 on Northport Boulevard, 12 hours at night, Fire Station 83 out on Haberland. And the unit hour availability was showing that we needed to add a full-time ambulance at Station 82. So we added staffing, and now we have a second ambulance at Fire Station 82 on Northport Boulevard, and there's a full-time ambulance now at Haberland, which is Station 83. That's also helps having that on the other end of town, having an additional unit for some of those response times and coverage to make sure. And then, in addition to all these things that we're looking at to improve what we have, we're on a consistent operation of planning for the future and staying with growth. So we are opening a fire station in Welland Park. Station 87 opens actually in a few weeks, probably about a month. I think it'll be conveyed to us June 9th. We'll be in a couple of weeks, and then we'll do a ribbon cutting or a hose uncoupling, we'll call it. And so that fire station, we have the staff is hired and on board for that. So that'll help with some of our times up in that area. And then we're in talks with a developer out of Toledo Blade and I-75 on a fire station out there.
Yep.
Also talking to the developer up in Welland Park on a third fire station up there, which is probably out in the 4-year horizon as well. So, and then the east end of town, that's gonna take off probably in about 5 years, which will be beyond my time. But we're planning for that now and looking at what that timeline will look like, and looking and making sure that we can build a station out there and get the correct location to make sure that we cover that area as it develops and grows.
So I know we've talked about this, but for the listeners who are new to why location, as a realtor, I can tell you why location matters. But as a fire chief, can you talk about the location and why it matters to the citizens?
Yeah. So, in an easy world or an easy city where you have block streets and everything's gridded, it's very easy as a predictor if you drew that in a systemic way to determine where your fire stations would go, because it's a very certain distance, it's a certain number of turns. It's a little bit different here in the city because the old saying here in Northport is you can't get here from there. You can't get there from here because of the canals that are in place amongst a lot of the east-west corridors and north-south corridors on how we traverse. So we take a tremendous amount of time looking and planning, and we get some help from the developers. We have some assistance in code that requires concurrency studies where we get a third party to help validate the things that we think to where those fire stations will go, because all of our responses are predicated upon the National Fire Protection Association. It used to be called the 1710 standard. It's 1751 now, but it talks about how quickly you should be able to put what's called the effective response force. So the number of people that you need on scene to manage a fire, how quickly you put people on scene for a medical emergency. Our target is 90% of our responses in the 90th percentile within 4 minutes. Well, that's hard to do in Northport. So if you looked at a map of the city to see where our stations are right now, you'll notice that they are all somewhat close to one of those main connector roads. So a lot of our stations run off of Price Boulevard because off of price you can get almost anywhere. That new station out at Toledo Blade and I-75, it'll be close to the interstate, so it'll be able to go north, south, or it'll be able to go east or west, from that location once it comes out of the neighborhood. Welland Park is a little bit different, but looking at what response times are in the road network, so we try and look at what travel time will be, and we measure what percentage of calls can we do in 4 minutes versus 6 minutes versus 8 minutes. And we map all that out, and then that helps us determine where the best location for those stations are. And you try and create it so that you have some overlap, because if a station units are out on a call, you don't want it to be too long before a surrounding station can get into, if another call were to come in, right after that. So as we look and measure all those things, and then you look at what's the population density in that area, what is the risks that we have in that area, and it's really a kind of a balancing game all the time of looking on. If you're in an area that might be, Welland Park is relatively new. The buildings are new.
Yep.
The population up there is relatively healthy. Although we have calls up there, it's not a huge call volume up there, but distance of travel and getting places is difficult. So our station on Prado Boulevard to get to the back side of Welland Park, now closest to Englewood, it's well beyond what those acceptable limits are, which is why that second station is getting ready to open. It's not because there's more calls than what they can handle. It's because they can't get there in the time they need to be effective if it were a medical emergency or if it were a fire. And so, again, it goes back to balancing that. And the call volume will come over time. We look at that as well and make sure that we build the station so that it can absorb when we're completely built out and the community begins to age. If we need to add units into a station, we can do that, but we of course don't want to wait too long and then think, gosh, I wish I had a station, right down here, and now there's nowhere to build it. And that's what you run into a lot of times with some cities that are well established or well developed already. You get government that can't find a place to put a station when one is needed. So planning is very important.
There are places, and I've said this to you before, and just to reiterate the importance of a fire department and their location. Charlotte County has some difficult areas. It's over a 5-mile run,
Yes.
and that affects homeowners insurance policies. So, as a realtor, just a heads up, if you're out scouting for a house, make sure you're within that 5-mile range of a fire department, and you have access to water near your home. You never know when you're going to need it, but when you do, it is essential. We're approaching about 10 minutes till the hour, but any kudos to throw out to staff members who have achieved anything, or who you feel like you should throw some kudos at?
I could probably name about 160 of them. They really are. They're all firing on all cylinders. We do have some cool stuff going on. So one of our district chiefs, Josh Clements, is running for an office with the International Association of Fire Chiefs to sit on their panel for company officers. So that's pretty exciting for him. We have a recently departed district chief that just went to. He's a very good friend of mine. I've known him for 20 plus years. He just took a job with Sarasota County as their assistant chief, which was a promotion and responsibility for him. And we hated to lose him because of his longevity and seniority and the knowledge that he has, but we're excited for the opportunity that he's got. And we'll, of course, still keep working closer together. And it actually helps us with Sarasota County being a mutual aid partner. It helps bring that relationship closer together. So we're excited about that. We've got 2 teams that just competed on the East Coast this past week at the RIT competition. It's Rapid Intervention Team competition. And they did very well. They didn't place in the top 5, but they one of the teams, it was their first time ever. So they're learning. And the other team, they've competed, I think, 3 or 4 times, and they're pretty close to getting into that top 5 bracket. But it's a very difficult competition, but it's a great opportunity for them to go and learn from other departments, learn the things they do, and learn skills and get faster at, the whole concept of it is that they're actually going in and rescuing a downed firefighter in a structure and getting them back out. So that's a great competition. If you have the opportunity of Voices of Northport, if you're people listening, go onto the city website and look for the podcasts. We've started a new podcast with Fire Rescue, and my first two interviews are on there. One was with Bobby McHugh. Bobby is a driver engineer with us. He's been with us for a while, and he's also the president of the local chapter of the Fools, which is the Fraternal Order of Leatherheads. They raise money, and their purpose is to put on education to preserve kind of the good traditions of the fire service, and kind of brotherhood and sisterhood, getting together and focusing on things that are important. So that was an interesting interview with him. And the other is with one of my firefighter paramedics, Martin LeMay, who has an incredible background. He was a professional skydiver before he came to work for us. So it's really interesting listen. I would encourage everybody to do. And what else?
I can see him in a firefighting suit with a parachute flying over a fire with a foam gun.
They do that out west. They do that in smoke jumpers. It's a little bit different out there because the topography is different and everything. But he's a really, really, really interesting guy. And we actually met him through his wife worked for Bayflight and was stationed out of our station for a number of years. And we met him that way, and he decided to become a firefighter. And he's been a great addition. So.
Fantastic. So we've got a whopping 9 minutes left. So on your agenda that we have not talked about, do you have anything you want to talk about?
We've got some educational things coming up. I actually just got back from teaching a class on leadership and management up in Tallahassee, which was great. I got to teach with a fire chief that just retired from a little bit south of us. Department name is escaping, Key Biscayne Fire Department, and then also the deputy chief of Fort Lauderdale. She's been the deputy chief there for a number of years, and actually she was just selected to become the chief of a brand new department that they're starting over there on the East Coast, Deerfield Beach. Deerfield Beach used to have its own department. They were absorbed by Broward Sheriff's Office, and now they're breaking off, reestablishing their own fire department after about 10 years. She was selected for that, but the three of us, through the Emergency Services Leadership Institute and the Florida Fire Chiefs Association, taught a leadership and management class. I was very fortunate. A couple of my personnel were in the class. One of my lieutenants was there, and actually two of my lieutenants, were there. And so it was interesting teaching a class, having my own people there. So they made sure they kept me on check. So it was very good. We're developing our next level of succession training, which is going to be Chief Lane put on a company officer development program, which is really for our company officers and our aspiring company officers in the future. And we just finished our second year of that program, and now we're developing kind of the next level up, which would be for all of our district chief shift commanders, and help kind of bridge the gap, because it's a pretty big jump to go from a district chief online into an administrative position. So we're looking to expose them to some information and some things that they're not used to dealing with on a daily basis in preparation for, succession, and have people, because my time, I've got about 4.5 years left if everybody will still have me, but I'll start looking probably in the next couple if something great comes along, because I don't know if I'm going to retire yet. I love what I do.
Never.
But fortunately we have amazing staff here that are ready to take that over. Chief Hurley, he's been doing a fantastic job. Deputy Chief Hurley, he's my admin deputy chief. Our operations chief is going to be retiring next year this time. Scott Lane, who's almost 50 years in the fire service, he's going to be a huge loss for us, but we're excited for him to do that. So we're just getting people ready to take those roles over and keep us moving forward, so we can continue providing the level of service this community's come to expect. We're going to have some pretty big asks at budget time for some things that we need to go back in. We have had an ambulance payment that was taken out last year out of the budget, and this year has been cut again. So we're $1.3 million short in purchasing ambulances in about 4 years. So we're going to be looking to try and figure out how we get that money back in, or what we need to do that, because it's incredibly important. But, our budget is split between fire assessments and general fund. It's the general fund side where ambulances have to come from. So they've got a tough job coming up, and next year's going to be tough as well. Legislation's already passed. We went through an exercise this year to look at cutting 5%, and for me to go back to a net neutral and cut 5%, it would be laying people off. So I would be browning out probably units or stations if we got to that point. So
there's I dare say, I hope people are hearing this, because you're not hiding it. No one at City Hall is hiding it. Um, Nobody in the police department's hiring it. Uh, we've had really no millage rate increase for 6 years, and I realize that everybody is tight walleted right now, including myself. I'm not going to even go there, but there are things that you must maintain, because you're going to pay for it one way or another. You're either going to increase your taxes and get coverage, or you're going to lose services. And when you lose services, your insurance rate could go up because your response times change and everything. That I think that's the most important thing for you. How are you going to assess the changes that are coming so that it doesn't affect our wallet differently as citizens?
Well, I can tell you, just like for the budget we're developing right now, I've cut over $100,000. Now, mind you, our training budget isn't much bigger than that. $100,000 out of our training budget that's proposed for next year, which I said I could do for a year, and we can probably deal with that. But I can't do that ongoing. The problem is if you don't keep people going to training and you don't keep making sure that you've got your eye on the horizon and know what's new, what's coming on, keep your people engaged, that equates out to performance on the street. So usually when you go through the budget cutbacks like this, training a lot of times is the first thing to go, but it also can be one of the most consequential. You want to retain the bodies that you have, and as I said, we always do in-house training regardless, but this is external training where people go and make sure that they have contacts and they know what's happening at the state, they know what legislative changes are going on, they know how all those things impact us. So we tighten our belts as we can, and we try and go through. And the one thing that I've learned over the years that I've done this is that my job is to provide the best level of service that we can with the money that we're provided. I give recommendations for what I think it takes to maintain the level of service that we have, but ultimately the community decides what that amount of money is through the elected body, the commission. And the biggest thing and the most important thing that I can do is make sure that everybody knows what the consequences to that potentially could be when that funding doesn't occur. And I don't mean to be all doom and gloom. One of the things that the millage rate has stayed the same, but most everybody's tax bill has gone up. The reason it's done that is because property values were going up and up and up. So your tax bill got higher with the millage rate staying the same. There's a study in Harvard where they did, and it was a similar sized community to what we have, and it very clearly shows that unfortunately growth does not pay for growth. So we were growing at such a fast pace, and values were going up at such a fast pace that we were able to do that, but it didn't provide enough money to sustain it. Now, as that economy is slowing down and the market is softening, it's difficult because we're not caught up to where we should be. If we were a stagnant community and we weren't growing, we could slow down a little bit and maintain, but we're not. As I said, we're getting ready to open another fire station. I'm planning 2 more in the next 5 years and probably 4 more in the next 10 years. You can't do that without increased revenue. And, again, without borrowing money, there's only so much surtax, and surtax money really had to be used. Price Boulevard had been so long and so neglected for so long, it had to be done. But that took a lot of money away from other major projects, future fire station builds, other things that are needed in the future. So we're just going to have to be very creative as a community, as city leaders, on how we do things in the future and how we get there, and try and do it as fiscally responsible as possible. Because of course, I understand every dollar that we spend is not my dollar. It's the dollar that the members of the community give us to ensure their safety and make sure they're taken care of. And we take that very seriously.
Yeah, it all matters. People need to hear it too, because I had that conversation this morning when I was out on my listing appointment that, they were complaining about their taxes, and I said, whoa, it's property taxes, that's county. And that's different than our millage rate. And once you start explaining it to people, they're like, what? They group them all together.
Sure.
And the payouts are different. And what we can utilize is different. So yes, while we have growth and we have I guess, an uprise in tax collection, and it still doesn't eliminate the need for more service, because as we expand our growth patterns, you have to expand our coverage. So it's not maintaining what we have, it's adding on to the additional build that we currently are going into.
Yeah, and I can tell you the Sarasota County, their millage percentage for emergency medical services has increased every year for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years in a row. Their fire assessment has increased every year the last 4 or 5 years in a row. Now our fire assessment has increased as well, but our millage, overall millage, has not increased. And so, as my budget increased on the general fund side, that means somebody else either had to give up or growth was enough to be able to support that. And you can't get to a point. We've been here before where we have to be competitive in the market with people so that we can recruit. We need to be able to retain the workforce that we have so that we have seasoned veterans and people that know how to do the job and are responsible. And our community needs to be able to afford to live and do the things that they want to do. It's finding that balance and making sure that everybody understands that. So it's very tough, and we're very sensitive to the fact of how much assessments cost and how much taxes cost and how much of everybody's dollar, what all that goes towards. And I went and looked at the new Welland Park High School, and let me tell you, it is mind blowing. I actually
I've been in it.
I told Mr. G, the principal, I said, I don't think I ever wanted to go back to high school so badly in my life. It's really phenomenal. The program,
it's not a high school,
not just the school they have, but the programs they have is going to be.
And it's really not a high school. It is, but it's really not. It's so designed to be next level. So it is mind blowing when you walk through it.
I think it's going to be great for the community. I think it'll alleviate some of the strain. Northport High School is a great school as well. I think it'll alleviate a little bit of strain there.
We're getting the facelift over there, so that's going to really help that area too.
Yeah, and the new charter school that's being built, where they're moving, that's going to be fantastic right along Price Boulevard out on the east side of town. So we've got a lot going on, a lot of really exciting stuff for the future for the communities.
Well, we've hit 4:02, so we're 2 minutes over, but I really appreciate your time today and you jumping on board and having this discussion. I look forward to whoever you're going to give me next week or next month. But if you get me that information sooner, I'll get it out into the public as quick as I can.
That sounds great. I will. I'll find out who that's going to be, and I'll get it to you, John. I appreciate your time today, and thank you so much to everybody that's listening.
All right, brother. You have a good night, and tell everybody to be safe out there.
I will, absolutely. Take care. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next Monday, and we'll be joined by a commissioner, a surprise event. Every third Monday of the month is a commissioner. Thank you so much for joining us today. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.